Hello everyone, in this video I'll be ranking all the races and species in Baldur's Gate 3 on a tier list. So this was a highly requested video and I want to do this to help out. I'm going to be ranking them based on the benefits that they bring to all the classes, not based on the appearance of these. So we got the High Elf here first. Now what's different between the High Elf and the Half Elf is that the High Elves themselves, if it's a pure elf, they get proficiency in short sword, long sword, short bow, and long bow, and they get proficiency in perception. Whereas the half elves will get spears, pikes, halberds, glaives, and light armor and shields. So it's more so like a human type build. But here, the high half elf is a pretty good one. So high elves get the choice of one wizard cantrip. Now I must mention that it is based on intelligence, so it's only going to be useful for certain builds. But even so, a firebolt to set off explosions is still pretty useful. So I would say the High Elf is a pretty good class. They also have the Fey Ancestry, so they have advantage on being charmed, which is nice to have, and they get Dark Vision up to 12 meters. I would say the High Elf is a pretty decent class overall. I'd probably put it in the A tier. Next, we got the Wood Elf, which I think is one of the best races in the game. The reason being, they get an extra 1.5 meters of movement speed. Well, this doesn't sound like a whole lot. It actually is quite a bit, because just think about how many turns in combat you're going to be having, and just think about how many turns in combat that you've had where you wished you had an extra meter or so movement speed. So that makes the Wood Elf a definite S tier, especially on any martial classes. But even as a caster, it pays to be able to move around a lot, and that's exactly what they're able to do. The Wood Elf also gets those proficiencies in short swords, long swords, short bows, and long bows, proficiencies in perception, as well as the Fey Ancestry and Dark Vision, making it a really great class and probably one of the best to choose if you're looking to, I guess, min-max for a martial-based class. Next, we got the Celdrine Drow, and also Loathsworn Drow. Now, I just want to mention that both of these are exactly the same. There's no difference between the two of these, aside from dialogue options. The dialogue's the biggest difference for them, and Drow actually gets a lot of unique dialogue options. Playing as one has been interesting. On top of all of that, the Drows will also get the proficiency, or they get Dark Vision alongside the Fey Ancestry that the Elves are going to get. And they also get Drow Magic, which is really useful. I'm currently playing through as a Drow. So they get Dancing Lights at level 1, and they get the Fairy Fire at level 3, and then a free cast of Darkness at level 5. Darkness is a really great spell, and it can help out a lot, so I'd recommend using the Drow and taking advantage of that. They also get the Superior Dark Vision, which gives them 24 meters of Dark Vision, opposed to the 12 that most other races get, so they're quite good. I would say they're probably about A tier, especially for role-playing purposes, because they do get a lot of unique dialogue options. But the free cast of darkness, the ability to see in darkness, they also, I gotta mention, they get proficiencies in rapiers, short swords, and hand crossbows. Hand crossbows are very effective, because if you got a caster, let's say early on in the game, when you don't have most casters don't have a reliable use of their bonus action. So a sorcerer, obviously Quicken Magic can help, but a wizard doesn't have any use for their bonus action really. So you can use a hand crossbow to make a shot, and that just gives you an extra damage roll. So that's nice to have, and I would recommend playing as a Drow. They also get the proficiency in perception too, so that's quite nice. Next, we got the Tieflings, and Tieflings are interesting because they all get different spells here. So all the Tieflings are going to get resistance to fire damage, which is nice to have, and they get Dark Vision up to 12 meters. Now, the Asmodeus one here gets Produce Flame, Hellish Rebuke, and Darkness at levels 1, 3, and 5, respectively. The Mephistopheles one gets the Mage Hand, Burning Hands, and Flame Blade at levels 1, 3, and 5. Flame Blade almost becomes a waste. It's a spell that's going to benefit from Wisdom. And yeah, I would say that the best of them is Azariel Tiefling, which gets Thaumaturgy, Searing Smite, and Branding Smite. So those are really useful. Free Smites is great. Karlach is Azariel Tiefling, so she gets she gets those smites for free. As a barbarian or a fighter, that's really useful. So I would say the Azariel Tiefling is probably the best of them, and the Asmodeus Tiefling is probably second best. And then the Mephistopheles would probably be C tier, because Mage Hand and Burning Hands are two spells that are... Mage Hand's very specific to like a mage style class, and Flame Blade doesn't end up being that useful, so I would put them probably somewhere around there. Next we got the Human, and the Human is... I feel like it kind of is lacking in comparison to some of these because they get proficiencies in spears, pikes, halberds, and glaives, similar to the half-elves, and they get the light armor and shields, and they get to choose proficiency in one skill of their choosing, which is a nice bonus. They also have the increased carry capacity of 25%, which isn't really that beneficial. If you break it down, you can send anything to camp. So if you pick stuff up and you're out exploring, you can right click and send it to camp at any time. So carry capacity doesn't really make a big difference here. In all honesty, you're probably better off going with a half elf because they'll also get the proficiencies and dark vision. And then if you go with a high or a half wood elf, you also get the increased movement speed. So the human actually is just, I would say, probably a B tier option. I played a human my first time. I enjoy playing as humans because, you know, I'm a human. I'm not an elf. So it's just nice to, you know, be able to see yourself in the character. But even then, you're just better off going with any other of the classes. So yeah, I would say they're B tier. You're better off going with a half elf, in all honesty. Next, we got the Githyanki, which they're definitely the best. So they get a lot of benefits. They get medium armor proficiency, so that is pretty huge. They also get sword proficiencies. Alongside that, they also get Misty Step. And yeah, so light armor, medium armor, sword, long swords, great swords. And they also get astral knowledge, so you can gain proficiency in skills corresponding to a certain ability. So you can pick like charisma to get yourself persuasion advantages or proficiencies, and you can switch it up every long rest, which is huge. As a human, they can pick one skill to be proficient in. The Githyanki can pick an entire stat to become proficient in those spells or skills. So if you need on the fly be able to open up a lockpick, you can gain proficiency in dexterity, which will give you the stealth and the sleight of hand. So very useful. They get Mage Hand at level 1, Enhanced Leap at level 3, and then Misty Step at level 5. A free cast of Misty Step is huge, but they also get Medium Armor, which is awesome, because there's a nice combination. If you go to speaking of Githyanki, if you go to Githyanki Crash, you can get the Dexterity Gauntlets, which will set your Dexterity to 18. And if you're wearing the Armor of Agility, which is 17 armor class plus your Dexterity modifier, that adds up pretty quickly to give yourself a huge amount of AC. That's 21 armor class just from those two items alone being a Githyanki on a spellcaster. Obviously on a fighter, that's not going to make any difference, but if you have a Githyanki like Gish style build and you're just going with the wizard at the start, it can make a big difference in your survivability. So Githyanki, definitely S tier. Also, Githyanki has a bunch of unique options for dialogue, but also there's a ton of gear that's specific to only Githyanki. One of the best swords in the game has a benefit for only Githyankis, so that makes it a really great class overall. Next, we got the Shield Dwarf. Now, dwarves in general are not great. I'll be honest with you. I wish they were better. So the Gold Dwarf, I guess we'll start with Gold Dwarf. So they get an extra health point per level. So at max level, they get an extra 12 health points. That's kind of nice. It's better than the other dwarves get. But still, at the end of the day, they have 7.5 meters of movement speed. So they have much less movement speed than the other classes, making them not that great. I'll be honest. The Gold Dwarf's probably the best. I would put him in the C tier. They get Dwarven Resilience, so that's advantage against being poisoned and resistance to poison damage, and they get Dark Vision up to 12 meters. That's nice and all, but the Gold Dwarf just doesn't really get much. They also get Dwarven Armor Training, so it's light and medium armors, and they also get Battle Axe, Hand Axe, Light Hammer, and Warhammer weapons, which is good. That's great. They get all those weapons, but hey, if you're a martial class, you're going to want it. If you're a martial class, you're going to get the proficiencies anyways. It only really benefits like a rogue, so not huge, because they have 7.5 meters of movement speed. Having less movement speed in a game where you're needing to move around a lot in battle, not that great. Next is the Shield Dwarf, which the Gold Dwarf gets the extra health points. Shield Dwarf doesn't really get anything. They just get the armor. Or I guess, yeah, the Shield Dwarf's the one that gets the armor proficiencies, which, again, is good, but you go with the Githyanki and just have way more benefits. And then the Duergar, or Dwagar, there's a few different pronunciations of it. They get the Duergar's Resilience, advantage on saving throws against being charmed, illusions, or paralysis, which paralysis is probably one of the most annoying statuses in the game, so it's nice that they have the resistance to that. They have superior dark vision up to 24 meters, and they have the enlarge spell, and this right here is what makes the Duergar a lot better. They get a free invisibility spell, and it's not like any other invisibility spell. So this invisibility spell can be cast pretty much endlessly. It can only be cast once in combat, but you can leave combat. If you leave combat, you get free casting of invisibility. So no other person can get the free invisibility like that. I would say the Durgar is probably, it's either top of the B tier. I'm going to put it in the A tier though, as the little people, there's not a lot of, for the ones that have the 7.5 meters movement speed, there's not really that great of options, but the Durgar is pretty good. So I would say it's probably A tier with the increased, not only enlarge the free invisibility, but also dark vision. It's pretty decent. Next, we got Wood Half Elf, and I think that this is another great one. The Wood Elf getting that extra 1.5 meters of movement speed, as I mentioned, is massive. And on top of that, they also get the light armor and shield proficiencies, which is huge. So if you're like a spellcaster, I played it recently as a sorcerer, and I needed a shield proficiency. So the Wood Half Elf is huge because it's similar to the Wood Elf. You just don't get the short sword, long sword, short bow, long bow proficiencies and perception. Instead, you get the glaives, halberds like a human, light armor, and you get the shield proficiencies, which is massive. But the increased movement speed being the biggest point of them. And also, you get that, it's 5 meters, or 1.5 meters or 5 feet, which is huge. Drow Half Elf, I would also say, is another really great one. I'm playing as one right now. It's a little bit, I would say, a little better than the other versions of the Drow because you get the dark vision. It's not the same dark vision as these Drow. They get 24 meters, where you only get 12 meters of dark vision. But you also get the light armor and shields, which is pretty useful. I'm playing as a class right now that's a Drow Half Elf, and again, they also get that shield proficiency, which is really nice on some casters. Really, really nice. Next, we have the High Half Elf, and kind of the same deal with the Half Elf. These are very comparable to each other. I would say it's probably another A tier option. You're just better off going with a Half Elf versus a human, in all honesty, because you get similar proficiencies. You just get a bit more benefit out of it, and you get the Dark Vision, Fey Ancestry, and the High Half Elf gets that one cantrip from the Wizard. So it can be nice to be able to throw in an extra cantrip, which can be somewhat useful at times. Next, we got the Strongheart Halfling and the Lightfoot Halfling, which Halflings aren't amazing either, I'll be honest with you. Most of the ones that have a decreased movement speed just lose out on a lot of benefits, because moving around is huge, as I mentioned. But they get the Halfling Luck, which is one of the best, probably the best racial ability in the game, which a single reroll on a 1 for an attack roll ability check or saving throw. So that can save your run sometimes. But there's just not enough else there to really make them a great class. Now, the Lightfoot, the Strongheart gets the advantage on against being poisoned and resistance to poison damage. That's just straight garbage, because poison is really easy to, like, there's multiple spells that will give you resistance to poison. There's protection from poison. There's Hero's Feast. So that doesn't make it a big benefit, and also you have decreased movement speed. So I put them there. The Halfling's Luck is what makes this good, but take the Lightfoot one. It gives you advantage on stealth checks, which makes it a little bit better, and I'll put that in the C tier. But Halfling's Luck is really the only thing that they bring to the table, and you're almost just better off going with any other build. So yeah. Finally, we got ourselves the Gnomes. Now, Gnomes are interesting. There's the Forest Gnome, which gets a free speak with animals at will, so that's kind of nice, but they have 7.5 meters movement speed and no other benefits other than the Gnome Cunning, so they give advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. That's nice, but not super useful. And they also get the Dark Vision up to 12 meters, which is okay. I would say the Gnomes are probably D tier. Deep Gnome, probably the same thing. The Deep Gnome gets increased Dark Vision up to 24 meters. And Stone Camouflage, which gives advantage on stealth checks. But you're better off going to Durgar, as they get the invisibility for free, so that makes them so much better. And then the Rock Gnome gets expertise in history, which is meh. You can just go human and get that for free with much better benefits. So yeah, Rock Gnome, not that great. Next, we got the Dragonborn, and there's a ton of Dragonborn options. There's like many, depending on your Draconic ancestry. There's like Acid, Lightning, etc. They kind of suck, I'll be honest. They don't get any nice benefit. They have the normal 9 meters of movement speed, but they don't get any of the benefits the other races do. They get resistance to a damage type that you choose, depending on the color of dragon. So you can get lightning resistance, or you can get fire resistance, which is okay in theory, but a lot of classes also give resistances. And if you go with like a Tiefling, you can get fire resistance for free. So much better. The Dragonborn is probably the worst class, or worst race overall, just because they don't get any real benefits from, like, if they would have gotten maybe like a +1 armor class or something like a Draconic Resilience base, then they would be a whole lot better, but they just don't. So yeah, I would say they're a D tier. And then finally we have the Half-Orc, and now this is an interesting one. Half-Orc is actually quite strong because they get an additional damage die on their critical attack rolls. So if you have a crit fishing build, Half-Orc is the way to go. Only downside is you have to play as a Half-Orc. They kind of look like Shrek. So the Half-Orc is nice. They get that extra damage die, which is huge. So if you're going for a crit fishing build, you definitely want to be playing as a Half-Orc. On top of that, they also get dark vision up to 12 meters. They get proficiency in intimidation, which is nice at times. And they get the relentless endurance. So lots of benefits here. The relentless endurance is basically death ward. So if you get taken down to 0 health points, you negate that down and you get 1 health point. So it is basically a free death ward. For that, I'm going to put a Half-Orc in the S tier as well. I would say that this is a pretty decent list if you're going for like an honor mode run or anything like that. I mean, you can do it with any of these, but Githyanki, Wood Elf, I would personally, I think Wood Elf and Wood Half Elf are the best. Probably Wood Half Elf's my absolute best, but Githyanki and Half-Orc are also extremely good. I would probably say the Githyanki, it's hard to say. I personally prefer Wood Half-Elf for the increased movement speed, but the Githyanki with a free Misty Step is massive, and the medium armor proficiencies is really nice too. Half-Orc, getting that extra damage die is huge for critical builds, but really, you could go with any of these options. I like the elves typically. They have a bit of a nice benefit to them, and dark vision and all that good stuff. So there it is. Let me know in the comments below where you would rank these different races in Baldur's Gate 3 or the species. I try to make this as fair as possible. I know this was a very highly requested video, so yeah, if you found this video useful, please hit the subscribe button below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.